Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to be looking at our project, which opens up this week. So let's start with looking at our schedule. So we are starting week 8, which is the week after spring break. So we are reviewing the company analysis project. That has its own module in D2L. In addition to starting the project, you also have a Chapter 17 assignment in D2L. So we will go over both expectations in this video so that you can get started for this week. The other thing, and you'll find this in the schedule, that I do ask everyone to complete is the mid-semester check-in survey. This is just a couple of questions to let me know how you're making out, if there's any recommendations or things you would like to see done differently. And then finally for week 8, we have a read and discuss number 2, which is due Sunday the 27th. That means your initial post is due by the Thursday. So make sure you get those completed. Don't miss the read and discuss. All right, so let's take a look at our week 8. We're going to go into our content and we're going to be looking for the new module that says Company Analysis Project. So that's our first thing that we're looking at. And again, we're starting that this week. You're going to see in the module that there's a web page, just like there has been for every other chapter. And there's also a link here that you will submit your final project to. So here we're going to click into the web page and it's going to give us all the information we need for the project. So we're basically analyzing a 10K of a publicly traded company. The companies that you have the option to choose from are provided to you. There are a choice of 4 different companies. We are making sure that they're publicly traded companies so they have all the information that we need to complete the project as we have it set up. So the first thing to look at is the instructions. So we're going to open those up here. And we see that we are first going to be looking at reading a financial statement. We want to make sure that we can be familiar with the typical contents of an annual report. And we want to be able to assess liquidity, solvency, and profitability of a company using ratio and vertical analysis. Those are all things we learned in Chapter 17 in week 7 just before spring break. So now, what we're doing in the project, it is a written paper. It will follow APA format using the 7th edition, and I'll give you some references for that before we close out of the video. You will include a title page and a reference page with at least 3 reliable sources. One of your sources must be your 10K. So the companies you have to choose from are Amazon, American Eagle Outfitters, Facebook, and TJX. TJX represents Marshalls, Home Goods, and TJ Maxx. So just so you know what companies those are. You're going to pick one of the 4, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. And once you do that, you're going to go find the 10K, and it tells you in the instructions how to go find the 10K. So what you're going to do is go to sec.gov and we're going to look for that company. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, so I am on sec.gov and I'm going to go to filings and I'm going to go to search for company filings, Edgar full text, and I'm going to type in either the CIK number, which is provided in the project area, or you can type in the name of the company. So let's type in, if I copy over the CIK for TJX companies, and I hit copy, and I go back to the SEC, and I paste that in there, it comes up TJX companies. So that's going to pull in our forms that we're going to be looking for. What we're looking for is the 10K. So you see here that it tells you the names of them. We're going to scroll down to where it says 10K. And the other option you have is you can look up here for annual reports. So that's one thing we can do as well. So we see that we have some 8K, some 10Q. That's a quarterly. We don't want that. We want the 10K, the annual report. The last one was filed was 3/31/21. So we haven't gotten to 22 yet for them to be able to file their next one. So we're going to click here on this annual report. We're going to open the document, and I would recommend saving it. It's a PDF, so you can save it so you have access to it easily. That's your company that you're going to be looking and analyzing. If you have TJX, if you have the other companies, you're going to follow the other numbers. So it tells you in here again how to do that. The other thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be providing different descriptions. So in that 10K that I just showed you, all this information can be found with the exception of a couple of things, and it'll tell you when you shouldn't use it. So another source you're going to have your 10K as one source. Yahoo Finance is another source that we're going to be using. And what we're looking for in your written project, you're going to have a written summary in paragraph form for each of the items that are listed here below, A through I think it's K, A through K. So you're going to have several written paragraphs. It is going to be a longer paper because you're going to have a lot of information in there. Make sure you provide in-text citations when it's necessary to show what pages you're getting this information from. And they give an example I'll show you the example in just a few minutes. So first we're going to be looking at the company description, where we're identifying what kinds of services or products the company provides, the major industries they compete in, where they're located, like where they do business, and who their major competitors are. So we can find that information. Competitors are one thing that you may not be able to find in the annual report. If you can't, Google it and cite it. The next thing we're going to be looking for is to chart the stock price, and we're going to be going to Yahoo Finance to do that. So when we're looking at Yahoo Finance, we are looking at the stock price of the company for 8 weeks. In the instructions, or in the overall the due date area, we're going to see that it has from one date to another. If that date has already passed, we can still go through and find that, and let me show you how to do that. Okay, so on Yahoo Finance, we're going to go in here and we're going to type in TJX companies. I'm going to use that one as the example. And we're going to click there, and it's going to have the stock prices as of right now. So every Friday, you want to know the ending stock price. The way to do that is you can go back 1 month, and you can scroll over and you can see the dates. So for example, the first date in this semester is, I think, March 4th. So we're going to go to March 4th, and we're going to go to the close of March 4th. And we're going to see that March 4th closed at 62.41. So you can go over to this chart here. And again, you can go back 6 months. You can go back, we only are charting for 8 weeks. So you're going to get those prices for 8 weeks. You're going to chart that in there. And what you're going to see in the instructions is it's asking you to do a chart like this, where we are assuming the gain or the loss of the purchase of 1,000 shares of stock. So we're going to have 8 weeks that we're going to chart. Every Friday, we're going to list the closing price and the value if you owned 1,000 shares. The first week, there's no profit or loss. We just bought it. What is going to be your profit or loss at the end of the 8th week? And that's what we want to keep track of. And you're going to cite that information. So that's the second part of it. When we get into part 3, or C, that's the income statement. You're going to be preparing a common size income statement for the most recent 2 years. We're going to be looking at that's going to be prepared, and you're going to discuss the significant changes from 1 year to the next. The other thing that you're going to be doing is, in paragraph format, you're going to be discussing the trend of sales, cost of goods sold, the expenses, and the net income of the company. The next thing is the balance sheet. We're going to be looking at the trends in the growth or decline of assets, liabilities, and then stockholders' equity. We also want you to review the long-term liability section of the balance sheet and describe the types of debt financing that they have. In part E, we're looking at the statement of cash flows. The statement of cash flows, if you remember, we just did that in chapter 16, is divided into 3 areas. We have the operating, investing, and financing. We want to know what are the major cash flow items in each area. What is the total amount of cash flow generated from each area? And what is the trend over the most recent 2-year period in each area? You're going to discuss that again in paragraph format. In part F, we're going to be looking at the stockholders' equity statement, or the shareholders' equity. We want to know what classes of stock does the company have? Do they have just common stock? Do they have common and preferred? Do they have more than that? We also want to know how many shares of common stock does the company have outstanding? We talked before about authorized and outstanding, so go back and find out if you have forgotten. The next one is, how has the company paid any dividends? We want to know if they've paid any cash or stock dividends, and if so, how much? And we want to know if there's any stock issuance or treasury stock evident in the past year. So that's the stockholders' equity section. When we go into the next section, this is where we start looking at the ratios. So we have it broken down into the different categories. We have liquidity and solvency ratios listed here, where you're going to find the current ratio at accounts receivable turnover, the debt ratio, debt to equity, and total asset turnover. After you get those, you're going to look at the results from you're doing the most recent 2 years. So you're doing each of the 5 ratios for 2 years. Then you're going to tell what conclusions can you make about those ratios. It gives you an example here of the format you can show your ratios in. Then we have profitability ratios, where you're going to do the same thing. 2 years for profit margin, return on assets, return on equity, and basic earnings per share. And then you're going to discuss the overall profitability or efficient use of assets that the company is showing. The next section, I, we're going to be looking at the notes to the financial statement. This comes after the financial statements in the 10K. You're going to start with note 1, which is the summary of significant accounting policies. You're going to read through the notes. You're going to find 2 of the notes to the 2 are financial statements, and you're going to briefly describe 2 of them. Again, paragraph format. Then we're going to be looking at the auditor's opinion. This is typically found just before the financial statements in the 10K. And we're asking you, what are the auditors willing to say about the financial statements? What type of audit opinion does this annual report contain? And what does this opinion mean? If you're not sure, again, this is not something we talk in detail about, so you may need to Google, what do these different audit opinions mean? That could be your third source. Then finally, in part K, you're going to be looking at the conclusions. We want to know, in your opinion, so this is just your opinion, but you have to substantiate it. What is the most interesting part of the annual report and why? What is the least interesting and why? What is your prognosis for the company? Do you think they're going to be successful? Are they going to fail? What does their market leadership look like? Are they stagnant? Are they getting better? Are they getting worse? And why? You can also point to economic, political, regulatory, resource, market, or other factors that can have an impact on the success of the company. So again, we expect you to have a strong conclusion, but this is really, what do you think? All right, when we go back to, that's your instructions of what to do. When we go back in here, we also will see there's a rubric that tells you how the project is going to be graded. And you can see that it is worth 100 points. We're looking at the format, whether it's following APA, grammar, spelling. We're looking at the company description. We're looking at the stock price. We're looking at the income statement, balance sheet, statement of cash flows, each section, and it gives you the descriptions of what the expectation is. So you can use that as a guide to see how you think you're going to fare. So that's your rubric that we're going to be using. Next in there, we are going to see that it has a template. So this is giving you a Word template that is going to allow you to see how it should be formatted. So this is giving you the format in 7th edition APA. You can use this or you can create your own. It's up to you. It gives you the format, the different sections. It has the headers that you need to have, or the headings that you need to have for each section. It also gives you a reference page and some refreshers in there. So that gives you the format of it. We also have an example. Now again, this is not going to be exhaustive. It's not going to tell you everything you need to know. This is just an example to give you kind of a little bit of information. We've blocked out some of the information that was specific to a specific company or a specific student, but we're just kind of giving you an example of what it kind of should look like, the format, what it should look like in the end. We're looking for, a written analysis. And again, just because this one, may have, it's being provided as an example, doesn't mean it has all the information you're going to need to have. It's going to have some information, but you need to be able to decipher how much information you really need to have. This is just a basic example. It is not saying that it is a perfect 100% paper. So don't use this as a full example. It is just a guide to give you an idea of what it could look like. Next, you're going to be able to choose your company. You're going to do this in the discussion board. So I'm going to click into the discussion board, and you're going to see different instructions than what you see here. So let me go back to there again. In any case, you're going to be looking at choosing which company you want to use. So you're going to put in the discussion board, using this link here, the name of the company you wish to choose. And again, it's from those 4 companies listed in the instructions. That should be done by the date listed here, so that you can, or the date listed in your class if it's different. And then the announcements will list who has each company once that date has passed. If you don't choose one will be assigned to you. Then the last link here is just going into the APA format. It gives you some resources. And if you go to our APA 7th edition, there are some resources provided here by the college that gives you different things that will help you with APA format. Again, a lot of you guys may have been in English 2 already, where you worked with it a lot. Some of you may be doing that now, or you may be planning it in the future. So I just want to give you some resources to be able to do that. Okay, so that's the basics of our project. Please make sure you get started with that. And then the other thing to point out for this week, if you click into weeks 8 and 10, you're going to see an ethical understanding. And in there, you will see that there is another assignment. If you click into the web page, it's going to show you what the expectation is. What do you need to do? How do you need to do it? And how do you submit that? So please make sure you review that as well for this week. It is not due this week, but you should get started on it. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.